जय श्री राधे। श्री वल्लभाधीश की जय। सी 84 वैष्णव की जय हो। सब वैष्णवों को सादर सप्रेम जय श्री कृष्ण। जय जय श्री राधे. Today is the 39th reading, starting with the end of Gopal Das Ji and then Varta 29, the story of Padmarabal. Part 1 continued. He instructed all three of them, I will be coming to Ujjain after a short time, then I shall bring you a Sri Thakurji to serve. I shall establish the seva for Mavaji and Virajo. All of you go home now. I shall come to Ujjain soon and then your heart's desire will be granted. They all three bowed to Sri Acharyaji and took their leave. They arrived in Ujjain before too long. From this we see how great Gopal Das was. These three Vaishnavas had a minimal amount of association with him and soon became disciples of Sri Acharyaji. There is no end to Gopal Das's story. He had such firm faith in Sri Acharyaji. Thus concludes Varta 28, the story of Gopal Das from Banswari, although in reality there is no end to his tale. Varta 29, the story of Padmarabal, a Sanchora Brahmin from Ujjain. Part 1. The manner in which Padmarabal became a disciple of Sri Acharyaji has been described in the previous Varta, that of Gopal Das. Sometime after this, Sri Acharyaji came to Ujjain. He stayed with Padmarabal and initiated his wife with the Lord's name and Brahma Sambandh. He instructed Padmarabal to bring a swarup to serve. Padmarabal knew another Sanchora Brahmin who had a swarupa at home, who was called Ashtabhujaji. The Brahmin told Padmarabal that he was not up to serving properly, that he found it preventative to bathe twice a day, and so Padmarabalji could take the swarupa. This he did, and Sri Acharyaji bathed him in the 5 nectars and established this Lord Seva into the responsibility of Padmarabal's household. Mavji Patel and his wife both supplicated Sri Acharyaji to give them a swarup seva, but he refused, saying that his son Sri Gosaiji would do that for them. Bhav Prakash, this was because Sri Acharyaji had accepted them into his fold, but it was Sri Gosaiji who would fulfill their heart's desires. Part 1 continued. Mavaji Patel and his wife Virajo bowed low to Sri Acharyaji, made some monetary offerings to him and returned home. Padmarabal then made this supplication to his guru. O Maharaj, I am a fool. I understand nothing. All the other Brahmins in my caste, family and society are locked into the mindset of reciprocal worship and auspicious works and their consequences according to the scriptures. They are all pestering me, saying that I have made a foolish move to become your disciple. Sri Acharyaji gave him prasadi sandal paste from his feet and some water from the washing of his feet, and told Padmarabal that when he mixed them in his mouth, he would acquire the knowledge of all the scriptures, and that he would be able to defeat any other Brahmin or men of knowledge in discourse. Bhav Prakash. Sri Acharyaji gave Padmarabal both the prasadi sandal paste and the water. The reason for this is that, although just the sandal paste would have been enough to grant Padmarabal all knowledge, it might so happen that he received so much knowledge that a resultant excited loving mood in the heart could overwhelm him, in which case his body might give up, or it might spill over, and then he might reveal Sri Thakurji's secret leela in front of unworthy listeners, because he would not be able to stop himself from doing so. Therefore Sri Acharyaji also gave him the water so that his body would remain firm. His devotion would be full of loving mood, but he would not spill over, just staying contained within the heart. This is why both types of prasadi items were given. Part 2. Once Padmarabal had a new bed made for his Sri Thakurji. However, his Sri Thakurji told him that it was too small, and this meant he was not able to sleep. Padmarabal was delighted that his Sri Thakurji had made such a request and had an even new larger bed made. Then Sri Thakurji was comfortable. In this way, Sri Thakurji used to communicate with Padmarabal. One day his wife offered very hot, sweet rice pudding to their lord. After the offering was complete and they were performing the waving of lights, Arati, Sri Acharyaji came there. The Lord showed his hands and lips to Sri Mahaprabhuji and complained that Padmarabal's wife had offered him that piping hot dish, and so his lips and hands were scalded. He did not tell her directly. Bhav Prakash. He did not tell Padmarabal's wife because she was an ordinary Vaishnava. In other words, she would be uplifted through her surrendering surrendering to Sri Acharyaji, but she was not directly linked to the eternal Leela. Part 2 continued. Sri Acharyaji then quizzed both Padmarabal and his wife. Why did you offer such steaming hot rice pudding to the Lord? His hands and lips are red because he touched it. Padmarabal apologized, saying that they were fools who thought that food offerings should not always be suitably hot. Sri Acharyaji taught them that all other dishes can be offered hot, but that rice pudding should not, because the Lord likes it so much that he would straight away put his fingers into it. Therefore, this dish must be offered after cooling down a little bit. Padmarabal still asked, but why did Sri Thakurji not let it cool down before touching it? Sri Acharyaji explained that the Lord is a child and children love sweet rice, so it is the first thing that he touches. Other things he may leave to cool down, but he cannot resist the sweet rice, so it must be served cooled. Bhav Prakash. Sri Acharyaji helped Padmarabal and his wife to understand. He told them about Sri Thakurji being a child and left the explanation at that, but he did not reveal the inner meaning because the wife was not related to the eternal Leela. Padmarabal was related to the Dwarka Leela, and so Sri Thakurji used to communicate with him directly. Even so, because he was not related to the Vraja pastimes of the Vraja devotees, so he was not privy to that mood. Sweet rice pudding is regarded as the loving offering made by Sri Swaminiji, thus representing her love, and therefore he hallows it so much. This teaching has already been given in the story of Narayan Das Brahmachari. When sweet rice is put before him, Sri Thakurji becomes impatient, and for this reason it must be served cooled. This rule applies to this dish only, and not to any other. Sri Acharyaji also loves sweet rice pudding, but Sri Gosaiji loves laddus. Sri Acharyaji likes rice and cool rice pudding, which are tender and soft, whereas Sri Gosaiji loves all kinds of unasakali dishes, and these Sri Thakurji accepts in a grown-up manner. In the path of grace, a Vaishnava devotee will have direct experience according to their capacity to understand and absorb. Part 3. Once Padmarabal went to Dwarka to have the sight of Sri Ranachor Lalji. Sri Ranachor Lalji told him in a dream that one of his devotees was living in Rajnagar. You should go there and cook there, he said. Padmarabal inquired of the Lord, I don't know this person, so how can I just turn up uninvited? Sri Ranachor Lalji informed him that the man would come to him to invite him. Padmarabal set off for Rajnagar. Bhav Prakash. Padmarabal is related to the Dwarka Leela, and so the Lord thought, if he gets absorbed in the Vraja Leela, then I might lose him as my devotee. That is why he specified that the person was his devotee. Padmarabal was therefore quite happy. Therefore his Lord told him that it was one of his own devotees who was living there. Padmarabal thought of Sri Acharyaji as Sri Ranachor Lalji, and so he deemed that the Vaishnava he was to meet was one of Sri Acharyaji's disciples, and so that was acceptable, since he would not then be related to the Vraja Leelas. This exclusivity meant that he experienced his Sri Thakurji as Sri Ranachor Lalji only. Padmarabal's son-to-be, Krishna Bhatt, would be related to Sri Gosaiji in the eternal Leela, and so would also experience the Lord. The lesson to be learnt here is that, exactly according to the Lord's wish and according to the jiva's capacity, that is the extent to which they would be able to recognize Sri Acharyaji's true form, and that would determine how much they would be able to experience the Lord directly. If one regards Sri Acharyaji as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they will have experience of Sri Krishna, the upholder of the Sri Giriraj mountain. For one who holds him to be even above the Supreme Lord, their experience will be of all the Vraja pastimes. Part 3 continued. Sri Ranachor Lalji told his devotee one night that Padmarabal would be arriving the next day in his village, and that he should invite him into his home to make some cooked offerings. That devotee asked how he would be able to recognize Padmarabal. Sri Ranachor Lalji simply said that Padmarabal was well known, and recognize him would not be difficult. Bhav Prakash, the Lord's meaning was, you two are both related to me in my Leela, so I will definitely engineer your meeting. Part 3 continued. When he reached Rajnagar, Padmarabal thought to himself that he needed a plan to find Sri Ranachor Lalji's chosen devotee. He had a student with him whom he told to go into the town and beg for grain from 5 or 7 locations, keeping all of those gathered grains in separate piles. Keep all of those gathered grains in separate piles. Then go back to those very people and try to return the grains to them. The student set out with the intention of giving back the grains. The devotee of Sri Ranachor Lalji asked him, you took the grains, so why are you now giving them back? The student told him that it was his teacher's wish. When he told me, fetch it, I fetched, And now he told me to return it, so I am returning it. I have therefore come to you to give you back these grains." Sri Rancholalji's servant asked of him his guru's name. The student replied that it was Padmarabal. The devotee gave him back the grain and accompanied the student as he carried it back. He addressed Padmarabal. "O Rawalji, please come to my home. I would like you to cook there." Padmarabal replied that he never went anywhere. The devotee said, "Sri Rancholalji ordered me to call you to my home, and I asked you to cook there. This is why I have come to invite you. He gave me this command, and he must have also told you to follow this course of action. You are the recipient of great grace from Sri Rancholalji, and this is why he has told me to invite you." Hearing these words, Padmarabal was overjoyed. "Yes, this is the wish of Sri Rancholalji, so let's go." He went to that devotee's house, cooked there, made the offerings to Sri Thakurji, and then served him with all the Mahaprasad. Bhav Prakash. Padmarabal would not have taken prasad there if the devotee had done the preparations, because the devotee was a baniya, or businessman by caste. In this way, however, both of them took Mahaprasad together. The student also received prasad. Padmarabal stayed the night there, and the two devotees of Sri Rancholalji spent the night enjoying talks about their beloved Lord. They both shared much love for Sri Rancholalji in their hearts, and thus their talk generated much joy. Part 3 continues. The next morning, Padmarabal began to get ready to leave. The other devotee asked him to stay for a few more days, but Padmarabal said he would not be able to because he was so anxious to get to Dwarka to see Rancholalji. Padmarabal took his leave and went off towards Dwarka. One day, Part 4. One day, Padmarabal found that he had a lot of flour but not a lot of ghee. He made all the flour into bread. He spread ghee on as many as he could and put the ones without ghee at the bottom of the pile. He cooked lentil soup and made the offering. He made the following supplication to his Lord. "O dear Lord, please eat the rotis with ghee on and leave the rest." When the Lord began to eat, he turned the pile upside down and began to eat all of them. He put the dry ones on top of the pile and the ones with ghee on at the bottom. When Padmarabal accepted the prasad, he saw what the Lord had done. "O Lord, why did you eat the dry rotis?" Sri Thakurji replied, "If you did not want me to eat them, then why did you offer them to me? You know I eat whatever is placed in front of me." Padmarabal then partook of the Mahaprasad, but he also packed up a lot of breads. They all had an amazing taste to them. After this, whenever he had his prasad, he would mix in some small amounts of these breads before eating. Padmarabal knew in his heart that these breads could never be polluted. Translator's note. Usually breads are not taken on journeys because they can get polluted. In fact, for the whole of his life he enjoyed little pieces of those very same breads. Thus he always remembered the mercy that the Lord had shown him on that day. Part 4 continued. After visiting Sri Rancholalji, Padmarabal took his leave. On the way he passed through Bansawari. There he passed the night at Gopal Das's home. There he cooked, and they partook of the Mahaprasad. Padmarabal thanked Gopal Das for his blessing that he came into contact with Sri Acharyaji, who was for him the form of Sri Rancholalji. "I was graced to become his disciple, and thus he fulfilled my life." Gopal Das remarked that thus was the compassionate nature of Sri Acharyaji. Bhav Prakash. This shows that one will understand just according to their capacity. Here Padmarabal thought of Sri Acharyaji as being Sri Rancholalji. This was the Lord's wish, and anyway, Padmarabal was prized out of the worldly plane, and his life was thus fulfilled. Part 4 continued. The next day, Padmarabal took leave of Gopal Das and returned to Ujjain, where he continued to serve his Sri Thakurji. He was greatly graced by Sri Acharyaji. Thus concludes Varta 29, the story of Padmarabal, Sanchora Brahman from Ujjain, although there is truly no end to his story. Shri Vallabhadisha ki jai. Shri Govardhan Naji ki jai. Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe.